Welcome to Druid Talks. In this episode, we'll explore the 600-year-old higher education sector in the US. It's reached a tipping point. In the era of technology-driven change, it seems designed to resist change. The traditional model has become somewhat unsustainable. There's a rising cost to tuition, there's mounting student debt, and growing concerns around the value of a university degree. But can technology help the higher education sector in the US survive and thrive? Today, we'll explore these topics with our guest, Jim Walker, a leading 32-year expert, not 32 years old, Jim, it must be said, but 32 years in industry, an evangelist who has worked at all levels in technology, the public sector, the military, and today's topic, the higher education sector. Jim is a robotic process automation expert and pioneered NASA's first in government deployment of the Washington bot, which is now in our industry recognized as a seminal moment in RPA folklore. Jim currently sits on the Roboyo USA Advisory Board and is a founding member for the RPA Initiative at George Mason University. Welcome, Jim.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to today.
Well, Jim, let's jump in because I have a lot of questions to ask, and I love talking to experts who can reply, just giving me all the stuff they've learned over the last numbers of decades. Jim, would you mind telling us a little bit about the US higher education sector so we better understand its challenges?
Yeah, so it's amazing when you think about it. If you go back to 1950, about 10 years before I was born, there were about 2.2 million participants in higher education. That could be in a 2-year degree program or a 4-year degree program. That number jumped to about 22 million people around 2020, right? The number of schools that were helping these students was about 1,400 students in 1950. It's over 4,100 schools today. So, a significant increase in the per student population at each of these schools. And to your point, we're starting to see this question about should everyone have to go to higher education? Do you really need a degree in something to go do for journalism? Do you need a degree? If you're a good writer, can you just go? I would make the argument, having a degree myself, they can't hurt to go get some formal training. But thanks to technology, you can get formal training anywhere, anytime these days. And I think the big thing that I kind of am looking at right now is, did we learn from COVID that not everybody can learn anywhere, any place? That there's now going to be this whole discussion on who is best suited for technology-driven education and who needs a classroom environment. Because I think we found that not everybody functions well in one or the other. So lots of opportunities for technology right now. I'm looking forward to talking to you about a couple of those ideas.
Well, let's dig into a couple of those things here. So if we look at some of the most popular emerging tech over the last numbers of years, we're talking about robotic process automation, intelligent automation, and conversational AI. Could education institutes put that technology in, or what are the challenges they might face when actually implementing those technologies?
Yeah, so they're going to have the typical problem, which is they have this older, in some cases, blended technology platform. Their enterprise is old school stuff and new school stuff. And that by itself has created a bunch of technical debt for them. Their network is built on something, but they're now using WhatsApp. And is that ready for it? And so you have the technical debt part, the network, the infrastructure. I would say that the schools also have this issue now where they have two types of students, the digital native and the digital immigrant, right? And so the kid that you see in the back of the car playing with their iPad today, that's a digital native. And they expect everything to be online. What do you mean I can't change my class at 2 o'clock in the morning? I can't access my student information at 4 in the morning. I just got off my night shift. And then you have the digital immigrant, who is a person my age, someone 40 years old, that wasn't born with an iPhone in their hand, but they certainly are appreciative of what it brings to them. They do their Ubers with it. They do their movie tickets with it. They get their football seats. And today you can look exactly where your seat's going to be and what's the view you're going to have. So you buy the best ticket you can online. So they're used to that. So You can't just sit back and say, we're going to stay the old school. We're going to have all these manual processes. We're going to make students come in to pay their fees. We're going to have them come in and written request and ask for a copy of their transcript, and we're going to get them that transcript in 6 or 8 weeks. So those kind of issues are forcing higher education to figure out how to be digital. They can push back on it if they want to, but there's an argument that a lot of students are making their decisions on where's the less friction to go to school. I want to take some online classes. I want to go to class. I want to be able to order something on the app on the weekend. I want to be able to register for classes while I'm driving to the beach. I want all of that. And in order to do that, a school has got to become a digital school.
It's interesting that just as you talk about all those things that we can now do digitally, if we were talking about this 5 years ago, that might have been a wow moment. It would have been Amazon, to name one company who could do it. Now, when we're saying these things, I'm nodding my head going, yes, of course, it's just part of daily life. And therefore, if they're coming from daily life to suddenly being juxtaposed with an age-old mechanism, then I can understand that would jar quite a bit. And the more technical the institute, the more flexible and available for me, the better. So what is the reluctance of higher education or technology or universities in the education sector from actually adopting all of this new technology and coming up to date with all the things you described a moment ago?
Yeah, I'm not sure that reluctance is the issue. I think it's what are the resource challenges. So there's a whole group of people that would love to see free education. But with free education comes a solid budget. And if you spend more than your budget, you have a problem. There's also the idea of we're going to charge tuition, but we've got to keep that tuition down so that students don't have to take out $100,000 loans and then complain later that they have to pay for those loans. Right? So there's this cost to saying, hey, we went from 1,400 schools to 4,800 or 4,100, and each one of those needs a network, and each one of those needs to be digital. And we're an old school. Let's keep our costs down by not migrating to all this new stuff. Right? Let's not use conversational AI. Let's make the students come in because they love us. We're an old school. We have a history. We have heritage, and people will come to us because we're that. Well, they might, but honestly, when you got inflation going around the world like we have it today, give me a school that I can afford to go to. Let me get a degree and get out into the workforce. So I'm not so sure that it's a reluctance. It's hard to think that places that were designed to be innovative and creative and to create drama and to create music and to create new business models, that they would say, yeah, but we don't want to do that with technology. I think it's a problem that the CIOs at these organizations have, saying, everybody wants all this technology, but they want my CIO budget to pay for it. And there's going to have to be a new shared way to pay, but mainly because we're democratizing all the technology also.
Yeah, it's interesting that just as you're saying that, Jim, because that's exactly what university was for me, a crucible of thought, a crucible of intellectual rigor and debate, and it was innovative, and you seen professors and students creating the very future in front of you. So that paradox of thought and then potentially action behind the CIO budgets, that is extraordinary. So is there options then, maybe affordable options or otherwise? Like, could AI, for example, help the education sector in the US deliver this promise we're talking about, or this digital way of working at an affordable rate?
Yeah, you'd have to think so, right? You would. It's interesting to me for conferences these days, right? We went from, especially during COVID, we had all these conferences that were in person, and that you had big buildings and massive infrastructure requiring people to set it all up, and there was a price for the ticket. Let's call it $1,000. And when we moved to the online format, initially, people wanted to charge that same $1,000 to attend the virtual event. And I'm like, why would I do that? $1,000 still is meaningful. You know, give me a ticket for 50 and do it virtual where you don't have all those expenses. I think the same thing with education, right? every class may not need to be in person. It's still going to require an instructor, but an instructor may be able to manage a couple more classes, more than one, because they are going to be able to use videos. They are going to be able to offer online training that you can go in and get pieces and parts of it. And you can make the argument that you could go get 100% of it. You know, if you're a Druid for conversational AI or UiPath with their academy, there are certainly ways to go and get fully certified on a technology. But again, if you're thinking education, it's more than learning a skill. It's learning all the skills necessary to be superb at that skill. And so I would argue that we're going to need to be able to use machine learning to track the students, to find out which students are not going to class and give them a call. Why are you not in class? Why aren't you attending? If it's a financial thing, did you know we have this program? If it's a life problem, maybe we have a way to help you. Maybe it's a woman who had a baby. Well, did you realize that we have this child care program and we can get you on some type of reduced cost for the child care? But we don't want you. 60% of the people, 62% of the people that attend college in the US finish it. That means 38% are not finishing. So we can use technology not to track them to say, you're not in class, but to track them to say, since we freed up our back office staff from that repetitive, mundane work, we now have people that can call students to find out, how can we help you stay in school? Hey, let's talk to you more about the impact of taking out a student loan. Yes, you need dollars, but you don't need partying dollars. You need your tuition dollars. You know, let's take those dollars first and get school paid for.
I think if you'd have told me that I wasn't allowed partying dollars when I was a student, Jim, years ago, I might have wondered and worried. Someone once said to me, a professor, Irish guy, Jim Murphy, still remember him today. He said, half of your experience is the learning and half of your experience is the growing. He did warn me and the rest of the lecture hall, just to be clear, it wasn't just me. He said, if you spend all of your time partying, you'll remember nothing. You mentioned quite a few use cases there, Jim, and I've seen some others. I've seen some, what I would describe as proctoring in AI, validating that whoever's at distance is the actual person. I've seen a great example from one of the big education companies a couple of years ago that as you went through the curricula by yourself, the AI was monitoring what you're doing, so it could bespoke tests and it could bespoke the next materials and the next interventions to help you learn rather than a teacher trying to cope with 160, 80, 200 students in a lecture hall. What other use cases exist that technology might be best put in place to try and alleviate some of the other pains in the education system at the moment?
Well, let's take some of the text, the AI. I would like to take an AI and have it assigned to me to be constantly looking out after my coursework. Because maybe I'm going to take a course next fall and I register for it, but I don't, and then decide not to take another course. And the AI could say, wait a minute, Jim, this course is only offered every 3 semesters. You've got to get it in now so that you can graduate on time. Right? Today, we have to do all that manually. And we have to do that with advisors, faculty members, or graduate students who would say they're overworked already, and they go and do that repetitive, mundane stuff is boring. Now, that's not RPA work. That's artificial intelligence, really thinking through, Jim's taking these classes, he's required to take these classes. Here's what the next 2 years of those courses look like for schedules. We better highlight he's got to take a class now. I can use all of the document understanding type of stuff that's out there to scan documents and to formalize what the document is and identify where it goes to get my transcripts. You know, I can verify online who I am today using artificial intelligence and RPA. It says, here's my driver's license and here's my student ID. Those two things together say, that really is Jim Walker. Let's go ahead and mail that transcript electronically to the organization he's applying to work at. And there's another piece, we constantly talk about using it in the back office for finance or for students, that we can change student information online and we can do that kind of stuff. But the other piece of education, of course, is education. It's not just the back office monster. The front of the education is students. And what an amazing opportunity today for two-year colleges, especially junior colleges, if it's sometimes called here in the US, to take a two-year program and say, first semester is RPA and an introduction to intelligent automation. And the second semester, you're going to build your first automation. And by the way, you're going to interview our HR department or our finance department or our NCAA athletics department, and you're going to find a process there that somebody's doing, and you're going to build it for them. And when we get through, we're going to evaluate, much like the U.S. Air Force does with their robot for every airman, we're going to evaluate whether or not we need to put that in production at this school. And so you have created a legacy. You're in your second semester. It's a two-year school. You're going to go the next semester, maybe you do conversational AI with Druid, and you build a bot that's able to talk to somebody at 2 o'clock in the morning and help them with their most difficult problem. And if it can't, it says, don't worry, we're going to assign you to a ticket. Someone will call you tomorrow morning by 9 a.m. And sure enough, at 8:59, you get a call from a person that says, "Whoo, I reviewed your record with a conversational AI last night, and I have a solution for you." Now, you just get this ability, and that's just the third semester. And that fourth semester, you're doing much like they're doing with hardware robots. I mean, my goodness, every high school around here has a robotics course now where they're building the hardware robots to attack each other and all of that. Well, how about we build robots that make this university smarter by having the students develop, now that they know conversational AI, that they know RPA, that they understand all the different kinds of AI that's out there now, the chat GPT type stuff, and they build solutions for the school. And because the school didn't pay for them, they can actually put them up on a website for other schools to have. And the next thing you know, we jump at a hyper rate from a manual historic university to a fully automated university that works for the back office, for the professors, for the students, and quite honestly, for the vendors that support that university. All because we put students' minds to work on it. And what did they walk out with besides a certificate, a degree? They built 2 or 3 actual automations that are potentially in use at that school. They have a portfolio now to say, not only do I have a piece of paper that says I can do this, but I'm also have the proof that I can do this. Here's my project.
Wow. That's kind of like a live, bit of playback there. That's kind of like a live laboratory where the university, and I love what you're suggesting, Jim. So they have a production-ready automations, and if they're shared, all of the universities do. But the students themselves are coming up with what I would describe as real-world, modern, in-demand skills. So they're work-ready. Because I can imagine if I'm a student, I'm going, I want 100,000. It's a great institution, but as great as a name I have, I actually want a job at the end of this. And I'm doing that math, and I'm looking at the course content. If I come out with real skills that I can talk to about employers, tick for me. And as you say, if there's that production, students building automations all of the time across the US higher education sector, then the university is going to benefit, of course, back office. And as you mentioned as well, all those other things, the conversational AI, the sports scholarship funding, you name it, it feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You mentioned conversational AI in the middle of that. And you mentioned 1 or 2 examples, students connecting with the conversational AI agent in the middle of the night. Do you think conversational AI is the answer to all of the problems, or is it one of the answers to support higher education institutions today?
Oh, I definitely think it's one of the solutions, right? If you're an RPA vendor and you walk in today to a school and say, I'm here to offer you RPA, that's only one thing. Now, tons of things that can be done with it. Repetitive, mundane work, no question about it. But if you really want it to be smart and intelligent, you're going to partner it with process mining. You're going to process it with document understanding. You could put a voice in front of it or the capability to text in front of it. And in the back end, you could hand it to an AI, that the AI can do the heavy lifting of the intelligence of it, and then hand it back the output to continue processing. So I see all of these technologies. I don't see a single one of them today as the solution. And I realize everybody seems to be wanting the chat GPT to be the solution. But I'm not sure we're all ready, right? It just happens to be That is truly the new silver bullet. But when you take any office in America and or anywhere, and you say, I'm going to create a new business, you bring on somebody for HR and you say, what skill sets do we need? And you find the right mix and match of skill sets for the right salary, and you say, okay, that's my team. Well, how about we do the same thing in the virtual world? Let's don't hire all lawyers when we have a call center. Let's don't hire a bunch of mechanics when we don't have any vehicles. Let's say, what are we doing? We're doing a merger with another company. Then we're going to need some process mining and task mining. We're going to need some document understanding. We're definitely going to need some RPA. We're going to need some artificial intelligence, but we're going to need conversational AI, I think, at the front of everything today. I love it when I get a company on a weekend when there's football season, and during a halftime, I can go on there and chat with somebody. They go, oh, well, it's not that fast because they're servicing more than one person. It's halftime on a Saturday. I don't really need speed, but I can finish a transaction on a weekend. Right? That's amazing. There's no 8 to 5, but we're not forcing people to work because that transaction is probably happening at somebody's house. You know, it's just amazing the opportunities that we have. So as a student, it's great for me to know that a faculty member at the school can call up the conversational AI and say, hey, Druid bot, I have to cancel class tonight. And the bot say, well, would you like to cancel session 1 or session 2? Well, session 2 for tonight or for the rest of the semester? Just for tonight. All right, great. Anything else? No. And when it finishes that instructor is able to do that in a second. A note goes to the university saying, hey, that instructor canceled another class. That's good or bad. A note goes to somebody in the building that says, could you go put a sign on my door? Right? Because somebody's going to miss the text message that comes to them. But also press C for the text message that you got it. And then the bot can send me back a note later saying every student in that section confirmed that they know class was canceled. No one student is going to go out of their way to get to class tonight and be angry that you weren't there. You can't do that today.
No,
people picking up the phone, calling students, emailing students, hoping they don't show up. And when the ones that do show up, they're always the ones that had to do the extraordinary effort to get there. So they're the most disgruntled. Let's don't have them disgruntled. Let's tell them.
I like that. I like what you're describing there as well, because now all of a sudden, one of the things I've seen, Jim, over the last couple of years is that if we're being transparent, bots are often underutilized in the back office and front office and everywhere in between. The AI can sometimes be projects or silos within different functions and departments. And for me, there's nothing more natural than a conversation. And if you could put a conversation layer on top that surfaced and dragged everything with it, then now we're starting to connect all the islands into one, whatever you want to call it, cognitive business application layer. You're starting to get the robots utilized a lot more. So now you're getting your value for money. I love the examples. I love to see that happen. What other examples have you seen of conversational AI making a real impact in higher education? Or what examples would you like to put in place to get conversational AI to really work inside of higher education, universities, colleges, or whatever?
Yeah, well, what I'm starting to see is the schools are smart enough to realize that they're able to get off their old chatbot, right? So let's just agree that a chatbot, just for definition, was dumb. You asked what time the gymnasium was open, it told you what time the gymnasium was open. That was better than not having it, but that's all it could tell you, right? When you made a phone call to the call system, you had to press 1 to get to this and 2 to get to that, and 3, oh wait a minute, I don't remember if 3 was what I wanted, so I wait for it to go all the way through and I go back through it. Okay? So a university being able to say to their students, call this number or text this number and ask when the gym's open. And the system will check to see what your geolocation is and tell you the closest gym to the campus that you happen to be on. So we have a client down in Southern Georgia that they have 2 campuses in the same town. Right? So if I need to go to one of the gyms, I don't want to know the time that the gym is open in the other campus. And I can ask the question, and it seems like, well, it shouldn't be that inconvenient when it comes back and says, well, campus A, the gym closes at 7. And I go, oh, I meant campus B. How about we just be smarter? Because if you called me on the phone and said, Jim, what time's the campus open? I'd say, well, what campus you talking about? B. Oh, it's just 8 to 9. Right? So this ability for the bots to be smarter. And this is just amazing that they're as dumb today as they're ever going to be. So if you have a chat bot that only speaks 42 languages today, next month it's going to speak 43. You know, if you're in the South in the US, today it may not understand what fixing to go means. But next year it knows that fixing to go is the same thing as I'm getting ready to do something. And so it interprets and understands and learns. So these are just going to get smarter. They're going to help me change my class. When I went to my bank a couple of weeks ago, I was online with a little chat bot and I was typing in questions and I got so frustrated with it. It would tell me it didn't understand my question. And like an idiot, I just kept retyping the question as if it was going to suddenly realize, oh, that's what he's talking about. With a conversational AI, how about I have it triggered that says if the person actually does what Jim did and asks the question more than twice, suggest to him that we need to connect them with a person. If it's not during the work hours, tell them, hey, I can't solve this for you, but I can make a ticket for you. But if it's during hours and there's a call center, hey, I'm going to connect you to a person. Because remember the old thing about just press the star key and it'll connect you with a person, they've got rid of that.
They did.
They said, yeah, we're not letting that happen anymore. And so let's make that bot understand when he says the same thing twice and I don't have the answer that he's looking for, connect him with a person. The person's going to have more time on their hands now because we have freed them up from answering those tier 0 questions. So a student that can go in there and change their pay their tuitions. So let's say it's the beginning of the semester when you can register for the next semester and you want to go register. You just got off of work at midnight. You're tired, but you know you got to do it to get your classes. And the first thing the system says is, whoa, you have some fines that you haven't paid. What do you mean I have fines? Well, if you were having it with a chat bot, it would say you have a fine. It would just keep saying that. But if you could have with a conversational AI go, you have this fine and this fine. Well, how do I pay those fines? Well, if it's a smart system, you could use RPA, partner with it, go into the finance system, let you put your credit card in, and you could pay those fines. If you have to go down, it could say I could schedule an appointment. But what you don't have is a student who already spent the day in class, cramming for an exam in the evening, went to work at 7 p.m., got off at 1, got home, realized that, oh, the world's crashing in on me because I haven't registered, and then get stuck because they got a little $4 fine at the library. And now they're able to, using their cognitive conversational AI and using RPA and all these other digital labors, they're able to solve that problem at 1:15 in the morning and head to bed.
I like the sound of that. I sometimes wonder if it's our fault that we've kind of spoiled conversational AI by writing really rubbish chatbots and by building chatbots that did what we wanted from the inside out, not the outside in. I'm a tremendous fan of a conversational design agent, that someone who can really understand what we are like as people and maybe not repeat what we're like as people. Maybe that's the opportunity to reinvent and redesign how we actually ask or get our customers to engage with us.
Well, part of it is we build what we can build when we build it.
That's true.
You know, and so it's a challenge these days, I think, to get people to not call them a chat bot, because that's a convenient little way to talk about them. But you do need to appreciate that a 4 horses pulling a wagon is not a Ford F-150. Yeah. They both have horsepower, but it's a completely different horsepower. And I would argue that this conversational AI and its ability to do work for me and to shift conversations when I shift conversations, you know, on my phone system, if I press 1, I have to do that one event. When it gets through, if the conversational AI says, Jim, is there anything else? And I say, oh, yes, I'd also like to check on so-and-so. It says, great, let's go that way. It's not, well, let me get you back to 0, and then you press 1 again. So it is conversational. And I think what we're going to have to do is get really good at watching these conversations and making them as human-like as we can get them. But nobody's going to complain at 2 in the morning when they were able to register. No faculty member who's a single parent that has to take his daughter to the hospital real quick is going to be upset that they're calling into a bot and having that bot cancel the class for them, because they know it's important to cancel that class, but they also realize the most important thing is that kid in the car to go to the doctor's.
Really great uses of tech. Jim, if we were to put a business case together, then higher education institutes are commercial enterprises, but are they looking for a dollar figure to build out here? Because you've talked about students' experience and academics' experience and a whole host of other things. That doesn't feel like a hard dollar commercial, business case you build with your CFO. So is the higher education business case different, or should it just be put on money, or is there a mix of business case that you could sell conversational AI to some of the institutions who are listening and going, can I afford it? Do I want it?
Yeah, so I have talked to several schools now, and early on with RPA, it was the CFO first and foremost. But in conversational AI, the person that's leading the conversations, and the ones that I've been in, is the VP for Student Affairs, who happens to be bringing his or her partner, the CIO. And when the two of them are shaking their heads, hey, we need this, they go lobby the CFO. And the reason I think that's important is, in the public sector, whether it's your state, your city, your county, your federal government, and the case of higher ed, I don't think that the first thing they think about is ROI $1, right? They have to service everybody. And as a result of having to service everybody, you don't get the choice of saying, I'm Coca-Cola and I got 33% of the market, I'm perfectly good. Maybe we'll shoot to get 31%, but we're not going to be able to afford to get 40. But as a government entity or as a public sector university, you have to service everybody that comes to you. And so the throughput to get through the registration process, the ease of which you can change your classes, the ability for the faculty member to realize that one of their star students is starting to stagger because he or she is having home problems, and they never could work with that before because they didn't even know it. They didn't realize that the person was not only missing their class, but missing others. And the ability to take some of that back office work. I mean, you've got small organizations that support that university all in the local town. Instead of having to have a person on the phone with Mike from the meat shop that services the cafeteria, Mike can't just go in and check the status of, do you need anything reordered? Have you made my payment? And so the people that they have that are servicing 4,000 to 1 now to the universities compared to what it used to be, they have the ability to do more important human things. And my personal example is the ATM, right? I honestly don't mind that when I was growing up and until I was probably 25 or almost 30, if I needed money, I had to go to the bank. And even today, the kids at McDonald's look at me strange when I pay them in cash because I just can't bring myself for a $5 credit card charge. When they live off the phone, it's their cash. And so the ability for us to start using all of this digital labor to make it work for us, was the promise of all of it before. Filling in forms and having a word processor to add stuff to and big Excel spreadsheets, that wasn't what we needed technology for. We needed technology to give us the outputs that we could sit down and make the student experience easier and better for everyone across the campus. And the return on investment for that could save some money, but it could also avoid, the state of California avoided $2 million in spending just because they did not mail out the annual renewal for driver's license. They realized that they could electronically send all of that out. $2 million, they said, well, the state's got a $22 billion deficit. Okay, but some organization somewhere in the state of California could use that $2 million that was saved was avoided being spent. So let's just go ahead and acknowledge that avoiding spending money is as good as saving money. And so, yes, you can get better throughput, you can get faster outcomes, you can do more surge work, you can do all of those kind of things. Oh, and you can save money.
Where do I sign? Where do I sign?
I mean, it is, and we're really past the point where you need to put your toe in the water. Honestly, if you're talking about process mining, document understanding, RPA, conversational AI, there's no need to say, hey, we need to do a little small thing real quick to see if it works. There are hundreds of examples of all of that working out there. You need to do something small on your network to just get used to, hey, how do we do the credentialing for this automation? How do we get it on the network? How do we make sure it doesn't cause us a problem with denial of services and that kind of thing? But don't start out with a $2 savings. Find yourself, what's our biggest student problem? Let's put conversational AI on that and let students ask questions all the time. And we'll learn from the students what they're interested in, and we'll improve those. Don't improve the one weird question that comes every 3 semesters. And pretty soon, through self-teaching, the system will teach us what the students and the faculty members care about, and we will create not only more conversations, but we will automate the things that we realize, hey, we created a conversation for that, but let's go one step further and automate the rest of that process. And by putting all of your questions and answers on a single platform, you can start saying, could we automate that? Yes, we could. Should we automate that? No, we shouldn't, because it's only asked once a quarter. Should we automate that? Yes, we should, because it could save us $500,000, and we can move that $500,000 over to something that matters to the students.
I love that. And at the same time, there's what I describe as real world research happening there. So if that intelligence is connected into the system, then the education institutes are learning from the students, learning from the partners as to what's truly important. Look, Jim, we can't end today without getting an opinion on the impact of ChatGPT on the higher education space. Do you see it as integrating with existing AI technologies to improve student experiences, or do you see this as something else that sits by itself?
Yeah, I personally think it's going to be part of the toolbox, right? But I've got a feeling that if you were in the early 1900s in the US out in the West, and you still had a lot of horses and a blacksmith in town, the first time you saw an old rickety car drive by, you thought, nobody's going to use that, right? Or why would you want that when you can have a horse? I think the same thing is there. We've seen this crazy adoption over the last just couple of weeks of the whole AI thing. And we've been afraid of it for many, many years. Oh, it's going to be biased. It's going to introduce bad things. Worst things in the world are going to happen. It's going to just be bad. Now suddenly they made it free and everybody's an expert. 50 to 100 different uses come out for it and different tools come out for it every day. Here's what I honestly believe. I'm a good fan, not a fanatic fan of Star Trek and Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica and those type of movies. And what I've never done is I've never gone to a movie where it's all about the ship. You take Star Trek, it can make your tea Earl Grey for you, yet they still have a bartender. And when they need that dilithium crystal pushed in, for some reason it always has to be Scotty. It's never send the bot down to it. So I'm a firm believer we're all going to have a need to be there in the next 100 years. But what we're all going to have to do is adjust ourselves. The tasks are going to change, the work may change, but you take that blacksmith, there was one of those in a town. You got an auto mechanic, you got a gas station attendant, you've got a upholstery person, you've got a tire person, you've got a new car salesperson. There are a plethora of jobs that have been created when the blacksmith got displaced. Not everybody could see that. They didn't want to give up that horse that they've been riding on for 3 years. I think the ChatGPT and all the new technologies is going to have its place. And it's hard to envision right now that one does it all. And so I'm all for sitting back and saying, we know that RPA works, we know that document understanding works, process mining works. We know there's great conversational AI out there with the Druid platform. If all that's out there now, let's get the value from it now. And if in 3 or 4 years, ChatGPT takes over the world, it will be smart enough to figure out how to take the task from that bot and start doing it. I don't have to retrain it. And if it's not, I'm still making value, whether that's time saved, whether that's money saved, whether that's improvement in services. I'm making those today on a technology that was available yesterday.
I love all that. Jim, thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to remember a couple of different things. You know, conversational AI and Chat GPT is not just another horse. that's the key piece here. And I do remember that Scotty was in every scene and still is. So even if we don't need conversational AI, RPA, AI, and GPT, we'll always need a Scotty in the business. So let's see who Scotty is. Jim, they say never meet your heroes, but I've read that NASA story so many times that I could probably repeat it. And I'm delighted I got to meet you today. And I'm delighted that the audience got to hear from you as well. That is one of the most insightful and best interviews that I've done. I love your knowledge of all of the tech, and I love the practical way you built out the examples across higher education and business and everything else. I really appreciate it today. Thank you so much indeed.
No, I appreciate what you're doing. Having a platform like you've got and spreading the word, I think is an important thing that we all are going to use technology. Let's all talk about it with each other, and we truly democratize it when we do it that way.
I love it.